Let's turn our attention back to Namibia because the domestic economy is estimated to have recorded a slow growth rate last year of 5% relative to the 5.7% in 2011. Last year's performance is attributed to the growth in the country's secondary industries, where we saw growth there up 3.9%. So for more on the national account estimates which came through today from Namibia, Namene Kalili, manager at FNB Namibia, joining us from Namibia. Thanks for joining us today, Namene. So that growth figure there, 5%, by global standards is something that America, the Eurozone, would be envious of. But for Namibia, it is a slowdown. What's it a reflection of?
Well, basically, we did have some pretty good growth rates 3 years ago, but those were more based on low base effects from a decline. I think it was in 2010. But we see that this manufacturing sector is struggling quite a bit. You've got some pretty weak growth figures over there, around about 1% mark. And that's basically what's holding back the growth at the moment.
Let's talk about mining, because mining had a nice rebound, 12% growth last year, fishing up 16.9%. So those, of course, seen as the primary sectors. Can we extrapolate that and see that as continuing into this year? I mean, what are your expectations when it comes to the primary side of the economy there?
The fishing sector is in pretty good shape. I think the fish stocks are pretty healthy at the moment. We've seen substantial increases in total allowable catches. So that's a good indication that the fish stocks are pretty healthy. In the mining sector, we're seeing a diversification of that sector. It's been traditionally diamonds, copper and zinc. We're seeing a lot more of investments in other minerals, particularly gold. And then you've also got oil and gas. Actually, our exploration in oil and gas and also gold has increased total exploration expenditure in the country by 4-fold or something like that. So it's looking pretty promising in the mining sector.
On the retail front, there have been some concerns around a slowdown in the first half of the year, that being seen reflected in the likes of, just vehicle sales figures, demand for credit, various indicators. But what did we see in 2012, and what are your thoughts right now as to how that side of the economy is faring right now?
Well, consumption is a very big part of the GDP. I think it accounts for almost 2/3 of GDP growth. And your vehicle sales have been, they're slowed down this year, but in the past they've been pretty high. And that we attribute more to a lack of expenditure avenues for the average household. Housing supply has been very weak over the past couple of years, and consumers don't really have much of an option but to go out and buy cars. So we see a lot of imports of new cars coming into the country, and then also imports of second-hand cars that are picking up. Typically in the first half it is always weak because you typically have a lot of vehicle shows that take place particularly during June and July, and then from there onwards we see an increase in vehicle sales, and then particularly moving towards the third and fourth quarter you'll see vehicle sales picking up, particularly in the heavy vehicle sales. So there we expect retail to pick up a lot more in the second half of this year than what we've seen in the first half.
Namene, what do you see as the emerging bright spots for the Namibian economy?
We're very bullish on crop production. I think there's a lot of potential over there. Typically we've focused on low value crops. We're seeing a lot more focus on high value crops and moving away from your typical cabbages and things like that to more grapes and some adventurous new products that are around. And then that's also going to be supported quite a bit by the new dam, if they can ever get that off the ground. And that will obviously bring in things like lucerne to support your livestock sector. Mining is always very promising. I think, uranium is disappointed from what we saw 3 years ago, but you've got gold coming to the fore. There are probably three. I think there are 3 interesting gold deposits in the country that are being explored at the moment. So that gives a bit of shine to the mining sector. And then construction is always a big one. You know, we've got a massive housing backlog, and there's a huge demand for houses, but your whole process to build new houses from establishing new neighborhoods is taking a bit too much time, and that's what's delaying investment, for particularly in the construction industry.
At the same time...
And then obviously you've always got the excitement of the telecommunications sector. The telecommunications sector at the moment, it's a bit too controlled by government. I mean, just opening it up a bit more for private sector involvement, I think there's a lot of opportunity over there.
And we've got to talk about the drought because it's the worst drought in a generation in Namibia. Is it going to have a material impact on growth, on specific aspects of the economy? Of course, apart from the socio-economic aspect of it, 100,000 children are estimated to be at risk of malnutrition. I mean, how do you see this drought impacting where the economy is right now?
It definitely does have an impact, and you'll see that in the agricultural numbers as well. Livestock has shot up quite significantly, and typically what your farmers do is that they start selling off a lot of their livestock when they see a drought coming, and that's why your livestock product or marketing has increased so significantly. But you can only do that to a certain extent. So probably from next year onwards, you'll see that your livestock marketing numbers will come down significantly, and you'll probably see a contraction in your livestock or in the livestock subsector. It will also have an impact on your irrigation farming as well, just because of the the water policy that is currently in place. Number one at the list is obviously your human consumption, and then it comes animal husbandry, and then mining. So but mining and human consumption will not really be that affected, so it will play out more in the crop irrigation space. So in terms of food security, we're in a bit of a hot spot at the moment. We will probably need to import quite a bit of cereal and cereal products.